are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me today, it is him, the one, the only, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back. You know, another 2 weeks off, and man, I really got to tell you, we're in the doldrums, man.
Yeah.
This usually happens the first week of August, last week of July. This time it's happening, last week of October, first week of November. But the NHL offseason is kind of at its lowest point in terms of the news cycle. Everything is pretty settled.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, it feels weird because October this year was kind of the usual July, free agency hits and
Draft.
You get that, not even the draft, because the draft is usually a late June thing.
Right.
So that first week of July, you go crazy about free agency. The first week of October, we were going crazy about free agency. And then you hit that point, that pause, everything is kind of on hold and you're waiting. And that's, August is probably one of the longest months of the off season just because there's really nothing going on. I mean, you might catch a late signing here or there, and there's a guy who signs in August because he waited it out and takes a 1-year deal just to keep playing or something like that. I don't know.
Right.
But that's what November feels like right now. And the hope is that, we certainly hope that that December turns out to be what September is usually in the NHL, which is that preparation period, training camps and possibly getting ready and things like that. And obviously right now we have no idea where it's going. I mean, I wish we did. I mean, we do have the last thing we got is that report.
Ideas.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing we got is that, they keep targeting January 1st, which is fair.
Yeah, we keep hearing small little things leaking out, little things here about they're still targeting January 1st, and everything is still pointing towards January 1st. And we haven't gotten anything firm or anything solid, but we have continued to hear kind of those little whispers.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, they're going to have to get to work at some point because it's early November.
Well, and I imagine they are. Like, I don't think they're sitting on their hands.
Well, I think there's communication. I don't think there's anything that's really concrete, though. And that's the scary part, is that you don't really have, like, if you had a little bit of something and you started to build on, I mean, I feel like we were talking about, when did the NHL really, I guess, technically made its return in August, specifically on August 1st, even though there was a couple games happening and the bubble started in the last week of July.
Yeah.
But we knew about stuff about it. Like, we knew the idea in May, I think. Like, it was late May that they had the idea out. We're going to go to bubbles. We're going to do this. We're going to, like, that's details that are firm. And then you're just sitting here finalizing, where is it? When is it going to be? And how are we going to pull this off in empty arenas and the hotel situation and things like that? But that was all to be figured out. But at least you had the game plan. They don't have anything. They don't have how we're supposed to do this. I mean, I do think that they're trying to sit there and watch the other leagues. They're trying to watch baseball and football and say, how can we do this in that way? Because bubbles might not be realistic for a long-term season.
Bubbles. I don't think bubbles are on the table just because of the Players Association. Not even the cost or the logistics or the blah, blah, blah. I don't think you're going to get past the Players Association.
Right. And I don't think so either. And I think that you need to, but you do
maybe
need to come
for
up
the playoffs,
with sure. And
maybe.
Well, and see, I think that down the road, they actually think that their goal is that, but depending on when the playoffs are and where everything is, I mean, I know, and believe me, I'm not here to talk about that type of stuff. We're here to be a distraction, not, a continuation. But, there's hope that
they can start putting people in buildings.
Right. There's hope. Well, I mean, because you're seeing it already. You saw it at the World Series. You're seeing it at football games. You see college football games, NFL games, whatever. You're seeing some of these things where they're at least giving you a partial situation, and who's to say that maybe with a little bit of luck here, and I know that I may be reaching here at this time, but that with a little bit of luck, that if it's next June, maybe early July, that you have to finish the season, whatever it may be, and you're sitting there and you can allow for 50% of the people to show up. Then an NHL arena is holding 10,000 people. That's way better than what you just went through.
That's a fantastic atmosphere, right? And that's all you really need to get the playoffs going, right? The building doesn't need to be full. The building just needs to be able to be loud.
To an extent, I mean,
people can be loud.
From a money standpoint, it does need to be full, but I digress with that. I mean, we all know what the situation is. And I mean, obviously too, the other thing that we can talk about is that the NHL is still targeting that January date, but the AHL has given us February 4th, and the OHL is, or I think February
The
4th or
OHL is
5th,
in the same
and the
area,
OHL is in
yeah.
the same ballpark.
Yeah, I think they're within a couple of days of each other.
So just kind of like, it's kind of a bear in mind situation right now where you have one Canadian junior league, a major Canadian junior league, and the top minor league in hockey giving you a date in February. That's the target.
And one thing we haven't heard is that any sort of changes to the season will have to get passed by a players association vote, right? Like as we saw in the bubble.
Yeah, they will. And I mean, the thing I want to bring up about this whole structure, and it was talked about on TSN the other day, Dave Poulin mentioned it, former Flyer Dave Poulin, who's an analyst for them. And he brought up a really valid point, which is there is a blueprint for how to do kind of this weird shortened season if you have to get back on track.
You did do
You've
something
done this
similar
twice.
in 2012 with the 48 game season. Right.
And exactly, that there's 48 games, because he made a valid point. There is, you have a target date that you'd like to hit, and which, by the way, is very
while we're here, I do also want to mention that the NBA has nailed down December 22nd, and that's starting to sound pretty firm.
Right. So so now you just mentioned two good things. I want to
mention that.
So so now you mentioned two good things that we should bring up with that then. One is that another major league that usually is on when you're on has given a date. Yeah, right. Which kind of puts the onus on you to start to figure something out. It does not have to be December 22nd. And Dave Poulin, when he talked about this on TSN, did say, I doubt that you see a training camp before New Year's, because once you get to January 1st, you can allow for the players, at the very least, one of the agreements you can make is have the holidays.
Right.
It's already close enough to the holidays. We're not bringing you back in mid-December. Let's just wait the extra half month, and we'll talk about January 1st as training camp.
Right. I feel like we've heard that the NHL is targeting January 1st as a season start, and I think it makes a lot more sense that January 1st is, when players report type of thing.
Right. And I mean, they could make a spectacle of it and do the Winter Classic like they usually do. And understandably so, like why it's canceled, because or postponed.
Well, they won't do it because they won't do it in an empty building. They won't do it without the ability to put 80,000 people in a football stadium.
Right. It's too much of a fan spectacle. That's the problem.
Right.
But that being said, like, you could have come back with a major event. Like the NBA is saying December 22nd for one reason and one reason only, because that Christmas Day game stuff is still on.
They make Christmas Day a huge deal in the NBA, and they have for years now.
And as long as you want to make that a thing, or continue to make that a thing, which is, every day, every year, Christmas Day, there's 5 games on TV, and that's what people can do if they choose. Right. And the Sixers have been part of this in recent years. Usually the Celtics are, and the Lakers are, and the Warriors are, and teams like that, teams with some clout,
market teams.
Yes.
And I don't follow the NBA. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not really all that much of an NBA fan, but I've actually heard some speculation that the NBA is talking about moving their start date to December, kind of moving forward, and making that Christmas Day spectacle part of their season kickoff, as it were.
Right. And I mean, like, I know there was rumors that could be the case with the NHL, that once they found out that this summer thing worked, that they could continue to do it.
Well, I hope in that case,
don't think it's happening.
Well, if the NBA wants to push their start back, I actually want the NHL to stay where they're at, because I think those 2 months of no competition, right? You're not competing with the NBA.
If it works out that way, then you want to keep it. But
right.
But see, what you're talking about though is, I think what the goal needs to be for the NHL, which is, I know that we're going to keep hearing Gary Bettman talk about an 82 game season and talk about keeping it as normal as it is. It's not even a matter of that. There's a way you can see an 82 game season in 2021. Of course there is, because you can make it last as long as you want to. There's no rules.
You can run into August again. There's nothing to stop you.
You can sit here and play from January to August or February to October for all I care. It doesn't matter.
You're not worried about building availability because nobody has things scheduled for next year anyway.
Right.
You're not.
But that being said, I think the goal needs to be to do everything in your power to complete a season that makes sense to everybody, which a shortened 48 game season makes sense.
I think we're going to end up around 60.
I even think that that's a little optimistic. I think 60 is your max.
But you also have to think that there are a lot of local TV contracts that demand X number of dates.
There are, but I also, they've put up with this before when labor stoppages happen.
Right.
I think they don't, at the end of the day, I'd rather talk about, I'd rather be talking about negotiating a shorter season that allows you to get back to your usual structure than I would be about however you can squeeze as many games out of this as possible.
Right. And since we did mention the NBA, their season is also going to be 10 games shorter. It's going to be a 72 game season as opposed to
and by all accounts, they're going to get 2 or 3 weeks extra. And they usually run a little later anyway. So they can always, I don't want to say shorten the playoffs. That's not what I mean, but I mean, like, you can condense the playoff schedule. They don't have to put 2 days off between games.
No, certainly not.
Like they did,
especially if they're
NBA
in a bubble and
they're
not right. And
right. If they do a bubble or if they do whatever. That being said, that I think is the goal. And Dave Fulham was saying this on TSN, that there is a structure that we know, the 48 game structure, and it's worked and it's produced good hockey because of the fact that every game matters. It changes the dynamic of the season because of the fact that the game matters. You can't afford to lose 2 games in a row in a 48 game season, the way you can't afford to lose 3 or 4 in an 82.
Yeah, things get really
that's the
tough
thing about it. So that's
48.
the first part of it that it works. The second part is like we said, December 22nd, maybe the target date for the NBA, or is the start date as they've come up with, that they've probably moved forward with, right? Like they're going to move forward with that December 22nd date.
Yeah,
so now you kind of seem
pretty firm. It's kind of where they're going.
So now you need something. You need kind of something that says this is when we're going to go, because that's when the competition's going. That's the second part.
There has to be a response.
Then there's also the part that is, don't forget that the Olympics got moved back, and as much as they want to insist that that's not going to be an issue, it's going to be an issue. And Dave Fulham said it. He even said that is their hard out. Like, that's the hard out for the end of the season. Before the Olympics start, you got to be done.
Yeah, and that's kind of the biggest factor toward the shortened season, because otherwise they could do the same thing the NBA is doing. They can do as many games as they want. They can play until August. They can play until September of next year. It doesn't matter.
So this is why, because I was with you about like a couple weeks ago. My thought was, you're going to get 60 games. It's going to be the easiest way to devise that, devise a schedule that, like, where you fit, especially if you have to play divisionally, or something of the sort, regionally, whatever you want to call it. So that this way, if there's an all Canadian division and you got to get 60 games in, then you'll disperse them around. You might be one of 7 teams playing each other all the time. And that means you're going to see every team 10 times, but it works. If even in a 48 game season, all right, so you see the other 6, 8 times,
8 times a piece.
I wouldn't be shocked. Like, you're going to see a restructure. Probably. This is just my guess. I don't have anything that defends this, but my guess would be it's going to be regionalized. So don't expect the Flyers to play Tampa Bay or Florida, but expect the Flyers to play Boston and Buffalo and teams like that. And, and obviously don't expect them to play the Canadian teams as of right now.
Right.
Just don't, don't expect a game against Toronto. Don't expect Montreal. And I got to say, it's kind of a shame that you're not going to get Montreal, because the playoff series kind of started to form a little bit of animosity there.
I think if they played regular season games, there would be heat there for sure.
Sure. And they played 3 competitive regular season games against them too. Let's not forget that.
Yes.
So then you got a competitive playoff series too. You know what I mean? So that's the thing at this point. That's where we're at. And I hope
really that's all there is to say.
But I hope that but see, I like the way that they just framed that, because now you kind of gave the December 22nd NBA date is a potential start. Whenever the Olympics do start, which I believe is somewhere in mid-July or late July.
Okay.
Well, then there's your end. But they're like, so somewhere in the middle, right? Like, so somewhere between January, presumably January 1st. And oh, by the way, when they did this in 2013, when they had a lockout shortened year, the season started that year on January 19th for the Flyers, at least. I think it was 18th or 17th for the rest of the league.
Right.
But you started 2 weeks into January. So you could have a 2-week training camp. I mean, obviously knowing that players would be doing their own workouts beforehand. And there are, by the way, that's something I think I should mention really quick, is that the other day, Bill Meltzer had tweeted out that a small handful, I think it's only 4 players, are in Voorhees actually working out.
Okay.
And the list was Nick Aube-Kubel, Carson Twarynski, Sam Moran is rehabbing, and one that I would like to personally talk about for a couple seconds, Tanner Lashinsky. who
Okay.
I think is
a couple of kind of borderline guys I do want to point out.
Yeah, I mean, Abe Kubel is really the only standard at this point. He's going to make the team next year. We all know it.
There's a chance that he gets bumped out for if a guy like Morgan Frost really impresses. But generally speaking, yes, I agree that he's pretty likely to make the team.
I think that his role could change. I think he's got a spot. Like I think because we can go back and forth and say he might be a third liner or he could be a fourth liner. Like we know he fits the bottom six role really well. But you might promote him because of the fact that he's got some scoring touch to his game. But then again, like if Morgan Frost comes in and tears it up and you say there's no doubt in our minds he's ready, then you got to take the training wheels off. And I don't doubt that they will. Lashinsky is really interesting though, because Lashinsky, I honestly think can fit on this fourth line. I think you're going to see mixes throughout, but I think the guys that we are going to talk about the most when it comes to possible additions at forward are Lashinsky, Linus Sandin, and Wade Allison. Those are the three that we're going to talk about the most when the time comes, because they are now under contract. They're further along because, Lashinsky's a college player. Wade Allison's a college player. Sandin's been playing in the SHL. Right. I mean, they're all playing significant roles, and they're playing with 22-year-olds or older. I mean, Sandin's older.
Right. He's 23 himself, I believe, correct?
Yeah, 23 going on 24. I mean, he might be 24 by the time the season actually starts.
Right. And I did want to mention his birth, about next season. I've heard some speculation that in order for the AHL to run, there's a chance that AHL teams kind of travel in conjunction with their NHL teams, and that there are some kind of that rosters are a little more fluid, shall we say, that teams kind of travel in larger bunches. And I think that kind of opens the door for these kind of guys to maybe get more of a chance to be seen by the upper management, right? If the Phantoms are riding shotgun on every trip the Flyers go on, and Chuck Fletcher's getting to see a whole lot of Tanner Lashinsky, getting to see a whole lot of Carson Twarynski, I think we're going to see a lot more rotation, especially if the schedule is condensed in any sort of way and there's just more NHL games.
And it depends on what they want to do with this too. I mean, I know that the travel schedule for the AHL is not going to be extensive. It's going to be well constructed to make sure that travel is as limited as possible. You're probably going to see, I wouldn't be shocked if when, we talk about the 3-3 weekends that you get in the AHL or some of the back-to-backs they play, you're going to see teams that are doing 3-3s where they're playing in one city. Right. And we're here for the weekend. We had a game Friday, game Saturday, game Sunday, and that's it. And there might be a couple, and there might be a couple one-offs. Don't get me wrong. Like they'll still play maybe a Wednesday night here, or maybe you'll try to travel to another. I mean, it's really complicated.
But I think a lot of your AHL time is going to be, a lot of your AHL games are going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Well, they usually are anyway, so that's not a shock.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be
the same way. It's in the same way that any junior game you're going to watch right now is probably on a weekend. I mean, they do this on purpose. Yep. They set it up that way.
Which juniors, you're right about the kids going to school.
Yeah,
that's less of a problem in the A.
Well, I mean, they could be, but at the same time, do they really they really have to be? I mean, some of them have signed their ELCs and they're on track to be making money, decent money, whenever they start their real pro career.
Listen, I think we should advise young players to always continue to get an education.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I mean, I don't know how. Well, and you know what? In Canada, I think things are a little different than they are in the U.S., where these American-born players I think the American-born players the American-born players can take the leap and also say, I'm going to college and I'm playing at college. Right. So then they are doing both.
And you're actually starting to see some Canadian players come down to the States to go to college.
Yeah.
For some of the similar benefits.
Well, because I think the biggest benefit is the amount of time you have. I think people look at, if people go out and look, and it's not going to be the best example because he didn't have the longest college career, but people look at Quinn Hughes and guys like that and go, if you play for a college for 1 year and get that kind of exposure, and also at the same time are 18 or 19 years old, and you're playing against guys who are 21 and 22, it's just as much of a training to you as it is to go into the pros and potentially try, because at that age, it's kind of it's all or nothing. You either make the NHL or you go back to a junior league where you're going to be the best player on your team
by a mile.
Right. I mean, that's just the way it kind of goes at that level. Yeah, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about how numbers get skewed. The OHL is a big scoring league, and barring whatever kind of decisions they make with how gameplay is going to look this year, it could be an astronomical scoring league. I mean,
It
it's going to
certainly
skew
could
numbers
be.
really badly.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes you think that these guys are more talented than what they are because they score 50 goals.
Right.
And it doesn't equate to 50 goals at the NHL level. For some,
No,
it
certainly
might.
not.
I mean, let's put it this way. You get a Connor McDavid out of the Erie Otters in the OHL. You might get a guy who scores, you know, who typically at that level scored 72 that scores 49, you know, like it's possible, but it's not always possible. Like
It's unlikely.
Like we got hopped up over some of the prospects the Flyers picked and go, this guy's a 39 goal scorer at the OHL level. This guy's, and he's not even, you know, he's got his draft plus 1 year to go and stuff like that. Yes, that's all true. You start hoping right then and there that you maybe have a 20-25 goal scorer in the NHL.
Yeah,
and if he's more than that, then great. But you hope that's what you hope for on the base level, I think.
Yeah, and there are a couple of little websites you can use. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are a couple little websites you can use that kind of help you get a feel for how scoring should be adjusted going from league to league, right? When you're comparing two prospects, a guy who played in the WHL is going to have way higher scoring numbers than the guy who played in the top league of Finnish juniors, just because they're different systems and they work differently. And it's, you know, but there are a couple of websites online that'll teach you how to, you know, kind of evaluate them differently. And yeah, the scoring is definitely way higher in Canadian juniors.
Yeah, it is. And I mean,
but the NCAA actually tends to run a little lower scoring.
Yes, it does. And it's more competitive. I mean,
yeah,
here's the weird thing. Okay. Cause you can get teams, and I think it skews things to an extent too, because you can get these Frozen Four games toward the end where you get some of the best teams out there. And once you get that far, you usually know you've got some surefire NHL players on those,
you have some likely
rosters.
First round picks, or
I think about the year that Union won the national championship and Shane Gostisbehere is a huge part of that team
in Philadelphia, if I recall correctly.
Right, but at the same time, on the other side, he's playing Boston College and Johnny Gaudreau.
Yep.
You know, and you sit there and you go, no wonder you got 5-4 games and 7-4 games and stuff like these
not
are
a whole lot
talented.
of defense there.
It's not even that. It's just look at how talented some of these forwards are. Like these are guys who didn't just go on to be complimentary players. Like that's, I don't know if Tanner Lashinsky is going to be a superstar, but that takes time to figure out. But he can certainly be a role player because he's got the experience of having to grind it out and be that guy. And he was a leader, in school and things like that. And he did what he had to do. And he's worked his way up through it. I give Wade Allison a ton of credit because he had to battle through injuries, and it maybe means that you take that extra year before you sign and say, I'm not leaving college yet. I need one. Like, it's smarter if I take one more year. And I mean, that's probably part of the interesting part of, what the Flyers did this year in the draft. You make 5 picks and you didn't take a lot of guys who give you that kind of window. Like you've done that in the past. And while we're talking college prospects, by the way, I think I should throw out there one of the news drops this week. Big Ten hockey is coming back next weekend. So if anybody's really interested, I believe next Saturday on the 14th, Cam York is going to play in his first game of the season with Michigan. And I will have to double check. I don't know if it's going to be televised, but if it is, you might be able to get your hockey fix.
There you go. And you get to watch a Flyers prospect. And
Flyers prospect, who, by the way, did you see I don't know if you saw it, Kyle. Did you see the picture of him in lifting weights?
I did not.
He's bulked up big time. I mean, this kid turned around and said that his goal, like the thing that he had to do the most, was get stronger. Well,
looks like he did that.
It looks that way. I need to see him play a game, but
sure,
potentially mission accomplished because he looks stronger.
Well, right, there you go. You mentioned Big Ten hockey's on its way back, and not only can you watch that, you can potentially watch a future Flyer. A guy that we're looking at as a top 4.
Yeah, he's talked about at the very top of the list. Just about. I mean, usually it's him and Igor Zamula. Those are the two guys we seem to talk about the most on the blue line. And there might be others that are to come. I mean, sure. I know Wyatt Wiley gets a good amount of buzz because people really seem to like him. And
I'm excited about Wyatt Wiley.
And Mason Millman gets some good feedback as well. And obviously, Emil Andre is a new member of this pipeline defensively that gets some buzz too, and not only that, Emil Andre, I believe, was just named this past week to the training camp roster for Sweden and juniors.
Okay.
So
I believe a couple of Flyers are trying out for Team Canada. Is that correct? I
Yeah, but
believe
they're
I heard a
not. They're
couple of
not
names.
both. They're not both from this year's draft. Millman's one of them, I
No.
believe,
Okay, Millman's one of them, and
and then Forrester.
Tyson Forster.
Tyson
Okay,
Forster's
okay,
on the training camp roster as well, which would be great because that's going to happen before he plays a real game.
right. That's some exposure to the top level, the very tippy top of Canadian junior hockey. It doesn't get higher than the world junior team for Canada. So the fact that he gets to go skate with those guys, even if he doesn't make the team, and I don't know the Canadian system well enough to know if he has a shot of making it. If he doesn't, he can still skate with those guys for a couple of weeks, and that's good experience for the kid.
He's got a shot. I'm trying to pull up the roster really fast because
because then obviously if he makes it,
there's
sky's
something.
the limit.
Well, but here's the thing. So there's something interesting to this because since there is nothing happening, leading up to this, they are able to. I'm trying to remember who it was who got loaned because somebody did get loaned though, and it was a huge addition.
Like somebody who just recently got drafted?
No. Or... Somebody who's got like NHL experience.
Oh, really?
Because he's still under 20. Yeah, hold on.
Oh, right. I think I remember hearing something about this. It was
here we go.
Somebody who was expected to like make an NHL team this year and like contribute. Was it? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to look for it right now because I'm sure as soon as it pops up, I'll know.
Right. But either way, if
let's put it this way, Lafreniere is invited but not required to attend. It says.
Yeah, I don't imagine he'll be there just because
I'm guessing.
I don't think the Rangers will be a fan of that.
I don't think it's. I mean, Dylan Cousins is standing up, but I don't think it's him.
Yeah, I don't think Dylan Cousins has any NHL experience. Maybe a game or two.
It might have been Kirby Doc, actually.
I think it actually was Kirby Doc.
Because that's who I was thinking in my head. I just don't see it on here.
He stuck with the Chicago Blackhawks last year. He played a lot with the Chicago Blackhawks last year. And they're not exactly... Yeah, I expected him to play a significant role there, right? They're breaking things up. Well, maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're okay with getting rid of him for a couple of weeks because they're kind of trying to rebuild things down there.
Yeah. I mean, so for Forster, it's interesting because he's going up against a lot of guys in his draft class. I mean, let's put it this way. If I go in, let's assume that everybody who's already been drafted for a year and gotten some form of experience as a draft pick is probably making the team.
Right.
So you're taking guys, and I mean, there's some guys here who are third rounders from the previous year, but like I'm looking at, okay, so Dylan Cousins, who was a first rounder in 19 to Buffalo.
Right.
Here's one. Peyton Krebs is on the roster. Connor McMichael, who was a first round pick for Washington in 2019. Alex Newhook was a first rounder for Colorado. These are some of the guys who you're going against. And then obviously there's all the guys who surrounded. Here's another one, Ryan Suzuki. That's another.
That's a big name right there.
That's a bigger name too. He'll make it, But then think of all the guys who went around Forrester, Connor Zary, Jacob Perreault, I guess you could say Cole Perfetti kind of went there because he went a little later than expected.
Right.
Dawson Mercer, Hendrix Lapierre. These are guys who were drafted right in the same ballpark as Tyson Forster, and he's going to compete against these guys for a roster spot among the forwards at least.
You never know. He could show up and impress and make the roster. And make the Flyers look very intelligent just a couple of weeks after draft.
Now that's the interesting part because I do think that gives Millman an edge to make the team. Because Millman's competing with a lot of guys who were drafted either this year or actually, believe it or not, there's even at least one guy. I didn't see any forwards like this, but there's one guy who's actually draft eligible next year.
Who would that be?
Owen Power, defenseman.
Okay, I've heard some.
Wait till you hear this. He's a 6'5", 211 defenseman.
At 17 years old. It's pretty good.
He turns 18 on the 22nd of this month. He turns 18 in 2 weeks.
I've done some early
That's
scouting.
Insane.
I've done some early scouting on next year's draft, and I've definitely seen the name Owen Power, and I'm definitely excited to see what he can do if he makes the squad, and I think he has a chance to.
Yeah, there is not a single 2021, or I'm sorry, no, hold on. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, this is a name everybody should know. Shane Wright, he's 2022 draft eligible, but he is already, this is a kid who I like, depending on when the World Junior specifically is, he turns 16 on January 5th, or I'm sorry, 17, because it'll be 2021.
He's got an exceptional status.
He turned 17 on January 5th.
Yeah, he applied for and was granted exceptional status to play in juniors a year early.
And for people who don't know,
people who don't know, right?
No, but for people who don't know, because the reason the name should sound familiar too is he plays for the Kingston Frontenacs, who are, who is and he's a teammate of Zayd Wisdom. So when the Flyers drafted Zayd Wisdom, they mentioned how the presence of Shane Wright has helped him to produce a little bit more, because you've got another this is a budding superstar.
Oh, right. And we're talking the list of people who have gotten exceptional status to play in Canadian juniors is a very short list. The list includes John Tavares, Connor McDavid, very few other names, but there is a list of people who have applied for and been granted exceptional status to be drafted into juniors at 15, I believe, or was it 14? If you get in with exceptional status.
I'm not really entirely sure how it works, but
I believe it's
very rare to get exceptional status.
Right,
we
but
know
you come in early and you get an extra year in juniors, basically, because you're good enough to play with 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
20-year-olds in certain cases.
Here's a kid who's playing, and obviously this happened last year too. So he had just turned 16 years old, and he is playing significant minutes with a team in the OHL.
Yeah, he's the next. I don't know if he's the next Connor McDavid, but he's the next.
He might be the next guy to get that kind of buzz.
He's the next Alexis Lafreniere. Right?
I don't
hear about him for a very long time.
I think he's more than that.
You think he's a step above that? Okay, and I think there's a real chance he lives up to that. Obviously, we're still a couple of years away from his draft, but Shane Wright is a name to keep an eye on.
This is the type of guy that gets talked about the way McDavid and Matthews got talked about.
Yep.
That you just already know. I mean, everybody knew that they were, in McDavid's draft year. You're just preparing for when this guy takes over.
At least 2 years ahead of time that this kid's going number one, and Shane Wright is almost there. He's almost guaranteed to be the number one pick in the 2022 draft, unless he completely falls off a cliff. Which, we've seen happen on occasion, but these days, scouts are getting pretty good at when you know. And with this kid, he's the real deal.
Yeah, what did I say? He was 16 years old last year?
Yeah.
Okay, so 16 years old, he played in 58 games, had 39 goals and 66 points.
It's pretty good.
That's his first year in the OHL, by the way. I know, by the way,
first year playing with 20-year-olds.
At some point in time, I don't know when, I could have been at the start of the year, maybe it wasn't. He was an alternate. So he has a leadership role too. He's 16 years old. He's got a leadership role.
Yep. Get your first round pick in the 2022 draft ready.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's going to be a lottery.
That's the way
ticket.
It feels with him. Yeah, that's the way it feels with him. And to think that he's possibly only going to get bigger and stronger, it goes a really long. It's amazing.
Hey, I'm just saying it now.
They keep getting younger and better. It's really crazy.
I'm just saying it better. I'm just saying it now. He better not end up in the division. Because I've been dealing with Crosby and Ovi for the last decade and a half, and now I have Lafreniere.
No, we all know
I can't deal with this anymore.
We all know the draft lottery is a little
send him to San Jose.
A little bit fishy,
Send him to San Jose. Send him to listen. If it's going to be fishy, send him to Seattle. Okay.
No pun intended, right?
Oh no, pun entirely intended.
Okay,
come on now.
Fine. That's good. Yeah, I know. I just appreciated that. That was good. I like that.
I gotcha.
Send him to the Kraken.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, just not the division, please. We have way too many superstars in the division.
Fine. How about Edmonton?
Fine. I don't. Fine. Okay. That would be entertaining. I wanted Lafreniere to go to Edmonton. How much fun would that be?
I'm just laughing at the. That's what other people will think too. Is it'll be Edmonton?
We got to depend on wherever Taylor Hall is at the time.
So Buffalo. Right.
Well, he only signed a 1-year deal in Buffalo.
Yeah, but he sounds really.
Wright's not getting drafted until 2022.
I will say Buffalo did something really cool.
Please tell me that little welcome video. You didn't buy that, did you?
No, not the welcome video. They did a behind the scenes thing of all of free agency day and how they rank goals. It was really cool. And Taylor Hall does not sound like he is like. Is it a kind of a feeling out process with the 1-year deal? Sure, it is, and they're doing it from a financial position too. But it doesn't sound like it's a sure thing that this is a one and done.
Okay. You think there's a
Like,
chance he
oh,
actually
they're absolutely
is a Saber for
1,000%
a
there's a
while?
chance.
Okay.
I don't know that it happens, but I think 1,000% there's a chance. Like,
Well,
yeah, there's absolutely a chance. And
I think a lot of that hinges on keeping Jack Eichel happy.
well, that this is part of look, I'm sure that when they talked to Jack Eichel, they said the same things they were saying to Taylor Hall, which was the dynamic that we see with the two of you together could be outstanding. It could be
And it
phenomenal to
certainly
put you
could
two
be.
together. And if we do that, just wait until you see where we'll go. We're already like trending in the right direction. They do, they do have a lot of draft picks. They do have a lot of young players who are working their way up. They do have, they're working their way toward that foundation. It's just a matter of,
What are they going to do with
putting
it?
it all together and finding out what really works and what doesn't. I mean, because let's this way, they're not that far removed. Obviously Eichel is the centerpiece, but they're not that far removed from Rasmus Dahlin, and they're not. That there's other pieces that
No,
can
for sure.
continue to come in, and and to be quite honest with you, I even think that Eric Stahl is going to make a difference for that team.
I agree.
Because he's that type of veteran. He'll be the consummate pro, and being the consummate pro means he's going to find a way to get through. I mean, he's going to help Jack Eichel immensely.
I'm sure
Because of that
yeah.
previous leadership. The fact that he was a captain and this is the captain now, he's going to help in that way. But while we're talking
Buffalo
about
has felt like a little bit of a rudderless ship. Sorry.
yes, it is. While we're talking about prospects, I think we should shift gears to, we've mentioned two other Flyer prospects who are on Team Canada. We talked about two Flyer draft picks from this draft class that are going to go into their camps for World Juniors. I think we need to talk about somebody else. And I've referenced him before as the Destroyer.
Okay.
Or the joke was his name looks like Destroyer. I saw it floating around. This might become a thing because I saw somebody else say it on Twitter too.
I think
it might become a thing because right now he's destroying the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
I think the fan base is going to make it a thing, whether he acknowledges it or not.
Oh, he's not going to acknowledge it. And it was really funny. I went back and I looked at his.
Well, either way, you're talking about your boy.
I'm talking about Elliot Desnoyers. Yeah. Because literally we did a show 2 weeks ago. And we're talking about weekend games then, for Halifax and how, on that Saturday night, right before we recorded, he just went out and in a 10-2 win, scored 4 goals, like it was nothing.
What, like it's hard?
Well, maybe that's not the case. Like, I think maybe we looked at it and we went, wow, we scored 4 goals. That's pretty impressive until Friday night. And he went out and did it again. Like it was nothing.
Oh,
so he's played 3 or 4 games in the last 2 weeks and has 4 goals in 2 of them.
So Elliot, why are you always popping off like this right before we record? Are you trying
so we
to
can keep talking about him?
Do you want us to keep talking about you? Listen, just come on the show and we'll talk to you. You have a standing invitation, Elliot. But either way,
had I mentioned last time, by the way, his head coach is JJ Daigneault.
Okay.
Halifax's head coach is JJ
I don't think
Daigneault.
you did. No, that's nice.
Which is really funny now because I'm sure that if anybody knows how crazy people probably are going when they hear about this, it's somebody who's been in the organization before, who's coaching him now, who knows about the development.
He's like, they're paying attention. Don't worry.
Who goes, oh my goodness, look at what he's doing around. I mean, obviously, very clearly at this point, one of the things is that, he needed to get a shot. We knew this, that was the talk going in. I tweeted out his numbers for the season. Now that he's added 4 more goals to his total. And oh, by the way, full disclosure for when people are listening to this, we're recording on Saturday, not Sunday this time. They play Saturday night. So don't hold these numbers against me if he goes out and scores again.
He could score 4 more just to make us look bad.
No, but you know what I half expect, honestly? I do half expect here comes a multi-point game. Here comes a goal and an assist, and here's 2 more.
Almost
and in 12 games, because he's played 11 as of the recording, right? 10 goals, 17 points in 11 games. It wouldn't shock me if I was able to tell you it's 11 goals and 19 points in 12 games. And oh, by the way, in his first 2 years playing for Moncton in the Q, he plays 2 seasons, 122 games total, 61 in each year. Scores 23 total goals and 66 total points in 2 years.
He's going to break
career
that.
high is his career high goal total is 11, I think, or 12.
So he's already there essentially.
Yes, it's 12 actually. It's 12 because he has 12 and he has 11, and he's right there. He's got 10 now. He's 3 goals away. He's a hat trick away.
which he could do tonight, and it could be out of date by the time this show goes live.
Surpassing his career high there. I think his career high in points in one season is 35. He's halfway there in 12 games or in
11 games into the season. So
like, come on,
And again, we talked a little bit on the last show about, you're kind of supposed to be dominating in your draft +1, but it's nice to see that he's going out there and doing it.
You're supposed to be dominating to an extent. And the reason I say this is because here's a kid who came out on his draft day when we interviewed him, when we got like the media access to him, who flat out said, I don't think I'm flashy. I think I'm a compliment player. Like, I think I'll be good in roles, and I know my role, and I can help offensively, but I pride myself. I'm more defensively. I even tweeted it out because the way I did draft coverage this year, as opposed to previous years, is instead of trying to write an article for every guy, because it just felt too redundant to sit there and try to write one in between.
Write the same article.
And not to mention that day 2 is hectic enough as it is. You can tweet out the thing, the pick, start to write the story, and then while you're doing that, go, oh wait, they traded up.
Right.
Oh no, I gotta stop and
distracted
go back
pretty easily. It kind of changes.
So it's better to just do something that's in the moment. So I tweet out the pick. The Flyers' 5th round pick is Elliot Desnoyers, and I tweet out his numbers or some information about him. He's I think he's 5'10" or 5'11", blah blah blah. This stuff, right? And I literally think that the words that I used were something along the lines of more of a defense, not as offensively gifted, more of a defensive guy.
Defensive,
not as offensively gifted as 2 4-goal games.
Yeah. Yeah, it turns out he decided he wanted to score.
Well, he did need to get a bigger role, and I do acknowledge that. Like, I'm not, to hear Brent Flair talk about how he was a really good player that was getting third-line minutes because he was on the best team in junior hockey last year. Okay, then he's talented. There's no reason to deny that. But this is kind of something else. I mean, do you know who I'm thinking of when I look at some of this stuff right now? I'm not comparing the style, the player style. I think of Oscar Lindblom. Well, I say he reminds me of Oscar Lindblom because he's got the 5th. He's a 5th round pick.
Okay.
I think he's a guy that not a lot of people knew about going. I mean, like, does anybody remember the day that Oscar Lindblom was drafted?
No.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we didn't know of him.
They issued the press release and we went, oh, they drafted this guy, this Oscar Lindblom guy. Okay, whatever. Sure. Nobody knew anything about him. And
right.
You're lying.
He was in a draft year probably before even I started getting really in depth with it. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't exactly.
He's been around for a couple of years.
We weren't exactly deep in the Hextall years,
Right.
Like, this is because this is 2014. So I think that was Hextall's first draft. That was Sanheim's year, that kind of thing. So we're not as deep into it. So we didn't put as much emphasis on the draft, I guess, and stuff like that. Like, it just wasn't that kind of a thing at that time. Like,
right.
You got to remember, this is a team that was
I think Hextall proved that he was a good drafter, and people started paying more attention as his drafts kind of went along.
Well, we
realized we had to look at these late round picks, and we weren't used to a system where we actually had. Well, first of all, the Flyers didn't often have 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks because they all got traded away for pieces at the deadline.
Right.
But we also never really had a GM who could pull these gems out of the 5th round, like Ron Hextall proved to be able to.
Well, this is kind of. I feel like Lindblom was kind of a sign that we knew that Hextall was a good drafter.
That's what I'm saying.
Because here's this guy who we had no idea who he really was. I don't even know if like I said, I don't think you remember his draft day. You don't remember him getting picked specifically. And you don't remember, the early years of his development.
No.
To an extent. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like all of a sudden out of nowhere, it was 2016, 2017. And all of a sudden we need to pay attention to this kid in Sweden who's really freaking good. You know, he's really good.
All of a sudden he's going to make an impact at the NHL level.
In terms of talking about it from a standpoint of he's playing at the top Swedish level, like, this is a pro league. Right. He's one of the younger guys and he's really good.
Right. And he proved that we needed to pay attention to him, and eventually he came over and started making an impact at the NHL level.
Right, because who else was that draft year? I'm trying to look through, like, all of them. I mean, it's going to be, I have to do it a totally different way than I want to because
I know.
on the fly. Oh, you know who else? Okay, never mind. So Lindblom's not the only one. Then we really have come to learn that this was a decent draft year for Hextall because the first round pick was Sanheim. The second round pick was Nick Alve-Kubel.
Check.
The fifth round pick was Oscar Lindblom.
Check.
Do we got any more coming? You know, like it would be funny if there's more. You know what I mean?
Right.
I believe
was Konechny the same year as Sanheim?
No, Konechny was Provorov's year.
You're right. I'm sorry.
All right, this isn't half bad either. Third round pick was Mark Friedman.
Okay.
I mean,
he's starting to look like he might make an impact.
Yeah. Guy who played in the NHL, can't deny it. You know, he made it there. Even if he's not a regular yet, you know, or whatever, he's made it there at some point.
He's got the experience.
And he's not leaving a place. They didn't have a fourth round pick because there were a couple trades involved here. Who would I see? Oh, wow. So apparently the one of the Flyers picks in the fourth round or their pick in the fourth round was traded to the Islanders.
Okay.
And the Islanders took Devin Taves.
Oof. That one hurts.
Or Devontae, sorry.
Right.
I said his name wrong. Yeah, I know. But then Lindblom was fifth round.
That was a pretty decent draft, it looks like. It looks like there was some decent little depth in that draft.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to pull it up in a different way because it's easier to read if I just type in Flyers picks, you know? Because I don't remember everybody. I don't remember everybody from every year.
Listen, folks, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that things get a little more casual in the summer and things get a little more conversational and a little more, hey, let me look this up real quick.
Well, and it's you know what?
There's nothing going on.
Well, there's nothing else going on right now that would make it a longer week, you know. All right, so then they struck out.
Okay.
They struck out after that because both of these guys are not even in the organization anymore. Rodel Fizlaev and Jesper Pettersson.
How did they give up on Jesper Pettersson? I'm really upset.
They never signed him.
Man, how did they give up on that kid?
I don't believe, or maybe they did. Or
promise.
Or no, I guess they did. They had to have because he played for the Phantoms for a while, but they never really took it much further. They never re-signed him.
I don't even know who that is. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. He played he did play in the AHL for a while though. Honestly, like.
Right.
He was one step below technically.
Right. For sure.
I mean, if nothing, I'm going the wrong direction. Never mind. I was going to say, cause I was about to say that the year after was okay, but it wasn't great because it's the Sam Morin year. That was the year before. So that wasn't Hextall. Cause then after that, you you count Provorov, Konechny, Felix Sandstrom's on one of these. And then even, 2015, you had a couple. The fourth round was not a very good. The fourth round was not a very good one,
right?
Because Samuel Dove McFalls was one pick, and they never even signed him. And then Mikhail Vorobiev was the other pick, and obviously he's in Russia now.
But he did.
But they do have. But all right, so here's the interesting thing. Now, and one of them one of these kids they traded, but he's made an impact because he's reached the NHL. Cooper Marody, was the sixth rounder, but the fifth rounder is still here and has a shot to be a decent fringe player.
Okay.
David Kasha.
Okay. That would be it. Yeah.
And then, I mean, obviously, as you go forward, I mean, there's chances for other guys to be big. This could be a very big year for the 2016 draft, depending on how things go, because we already know that the 16 draft is a good one because it's Carter Hart's year.
Right.
But then you throw in Wade Allison was a second round pick that year.
He has a chance to make an impact.
And Tanner Lashinsky was a sixth.
And he looks like he has a chance to make an impact.
And then not only that, but lump that in with Carson Twarynski was a third.
Solid.
Connor Bunneman was a fourth.
Solid.
Rubtsov was your first that year.
Man, that's a whole.
I mean, you've got guys.
That's a whole first unit for the Phantoms.
Well, potentially, but at the same time, you got guys who could still make the jump. I think that Bunneman's a decent pick at the fourth round.
Yeah,
and he gave you something in the NHL this year.
Yeah, and you don't really expect much beyond your third round picks or so.
Right.
Basically, anybody beyond that who makes the NHL is just kind of found money.
Right. You kind of get lucky with that to an extent, and that's the thing. So, this being now that we're on to the second, this is the second class for Chuck Fletcher at this point. I mean, I'm sure that if we can sit down and watch Cam York next weekend and get a feel for it, we'll see maybe something. But man, being that you can't watch any of the other kids, realistically, I mean, Emil Andre's playing, but it's in Sweden. It's again, it's another one's tough to watch. Being that you can't really watch Tyson Forrester and Zayd Wisdom and Connor McLennan and guys like that, and even go further down the list because Bobby Brink's not playing yet, and guys like that. Mason Millman's not playing yet. You want them to be, but they're in leagues that just aren't started yet. And here's Elliot Desnoyers, who is one of the only players in North America playing in organized gameplay right now
He's
and lighting it up.
Yep.
Can't
Like really
that's
ask
the
for much
best
more than
part.
that.
It's great. And man, does it seem like this kid is fine. Here's the funny part with him, because I went back and obviously there were two things I did while this game was going on Friday night. One was I actually had at one point in time after I saw he had 2 in the first period, I started listening to the radio broadcast because streams are not easy to find with this stuff. And the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is, no offense, because I like the leagues. I think Canadian juniors are awesome from a competition standpoint. I think it's a great developmental league. Their streaming service sucks.
Yeah.
There needs to be an easier way to do this and to make it more accessible, because you need to be able to, especially in times like these right now, where if the Q is playing, and let's say that the WHL starts in a month, because I believe that that's the target for them. It's still December. And whenever the OHL starts, like, you just give us something to watch. Like, people really do get invested in their draft picks.
Yeah, definitely.
To an extent. And it would be nice. So I'm listening to the radio broadcast, and at the same time, they do tweet out clips.
Sure.
I watched all 4 of these goals, and I don't think, I'd say the one he scored the hat trick on is probably the prettiest one.
Okay.
But there was a common theme to every single goal he scored, and it's going to the net. He's a net front guy. He scores on a rebound. He scores on a deflection. He follows his play to the net. And the last one, which was probably the best one, is he gets off of a sort of turnover, if you will, because I think they call it a turnover on the broadcast. It's very close to being a turnover / just a good hard forechecking play.
Okay.
That leads to something big. It could have been just as much of a takeaway as it was a turnover.
Okay.
But Desnoyers is down low right in front of the net and now behind the defense because there's a quick shift in possession change. And he's tapping his stick. He wants it at that point. He gets it. And he gets 3 chances at it. And the last one, it's not even on the ice. The thing is up in the air and he whacks it over the goalie.
Okay.
So he's got hand-eye. He's got net front presence. He's hard-nosed to go to the net. He can sniff out a goal when he's there, obviously. So he does not from what I've gathered, he's not really going to score a ton that are pretty. He scores a ton that are around the net.
Okay.
And it means he's it means he's a hard worker.
Right. We saw that for years. I don't know how he might compare to a player like Wayne Simmons, but we saw that kind of drive to the net, bang home rebounds serve very, very effective for Wayne Simmons in a Flyers uniform.
Right. And I mean,
especially on the power play.
Exactly. And it's just good to know that you have some, like, it's, I don't know how many teams out there are sitting there looking at some of these guys and going, maybe we've got something special here. I mean, even the Rangers with Lafreniere are not able to completely take advantage of it, because for right now he's already signed on, and I don't believe he's playing because they can't officially send him back. I don't know if they can even loan him.
Okay.
They might be able to, I don't know, but they haven't, because I think right now they just want him to focus on just getting ready for the NHL season, whenever it may be. And then you start to look at some of the others. I mean, like, think about a couple of these other picks too, I mean, Byfield went number 2 to the Kings. You don't know if he's going to make that team or not. There's always an outside shot because you're a top pick for a team that didn't do very well.
I think they'd send him back just to get him guaranteed top ice time. Right. Let him go dominate one more year. The Kings don't want to be good anyway, so they don't want him to succeed in their lineup. They're still rebuilding.
And that's fair. Now, that being said, now picture this. He's in the OHL, so you already know he's not playing a game until February.
Right.
Well, with the exception of juniors, the World Junior Championships. Tim Stützle got hurt already.
Yep.
He's out for a while. Like, you've got guys who are missing time. I mean, about the closest thing I've got is that Lucas Raymond is the first guy who, from the draft, that was in the order of their selection anyway, that you sit there and you finally go, well, I saw something recently that actually would make me get excited about this kid, because he went out like right after getting drafted. I believe it was him, and I think Holtz did this too. Alexander Holtz, who went to the Devils, went out and almost immediately like did something in their next game. And they're going, oh, okay, get ready, Devils fans, get ready, Red Wings fans. This is what you're going to be able to get in like another little bit amount of time. But there's nobody else, you know what I mean? Like, there's nobody else. I'm going through with OHL, maybe a Russian guy, or wait, hold on a minute. The first Russian was a goalie.
Right.
So that doesn't even, really work out that way. And I have to keep scrolling. Okay. And finally I get to 1, because when Edmonton comes up at 14 and Dylan Holloway's on the list. All right, fine. He's Canadian. This is something that you mentioned earlier in the show. He's a Canadian who's playing for Wisconsin.
Yep.
So when Big Ten hockey starts up, Dylan Holloway will be playing, and I'm sure people will be paying attention to that. But I have to go but I have to go all the way down. And I don't even know, he's probably not even playing because half the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is shut down. So only half is playing, but I have to go all the way down to the Devils pick at 18 in Dawson Mercer to find the first guy outside of Lafreniere who was in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Yeah, that league is weird.
And probably the only guy, like the next guy in line who people get excited about is Desnoyers' teammate, Justin Barron.
Okay.
Who's playing for Halifax. He was 25th overall to Colorado, and that's the next guy I can find from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. There was only a handful that were even taken in the first round.
Yeah, I'm curious if that changes next year just because people will have more QMJHL footage to look at least from the early season, right? A lot of the scouting focus from NHL teams is on the Q just because that's the only league with any games running at the moment.
Right, and I mean, who knows?
I'm just curious if it leads to slightly more QMJHL players getting, drafted a little higher next year.
Yeah, and I think well, let's put it this way. I think that at some point in time, like it's going to have to come into play how much we see of everybody. Like it's really hard to tell right now when you don't see anybody. I mean, it's you almost go, what are scouts doing? I mean,
right. And there's so much focus on watching a player play in their draft year, and
right. And I
mean,
nobody's
playing in their draft year right now.
Well, and I think there's going to be an element of it that starts to return now. I mean, if we're talking about how just about every weekend there are some Quebec Major Junior Hockey League games on,
they'll allow scouts in the building.
Well, not only that, but you got that to start with. Next month, you should have WHL games again, which would be nice. College games are starting to come back in short, in
right,
small,
we talked about the Big 10.
Small,
yep.
In small bunches, but they're coming back. And the Big 10 is probably the
biggest
big
one. Yeah, once that comes back, that's you get some fairly major programs involved once the Big 10's back.
It's really the Big 10, and probably Hockey East is probably the other one because just when you can get those Boston area teams in there, when BU and BC are playing,
right.
When there's a handful from Ohio, and I'm not talking about Ohio State's obviously one that's a Big 10 thing, but when you can get, Miami, Ohio, when you can get North Dakota, when you can get Denver playing again, Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, like when you can get those teams back in action, that's where a lot of guys go. And I believe that Minnesota is another one who starts back up soon, I believe is one.
Okay.
Because that's another flyer prospect. I mean, it's way down the list, but I think Bryce Brodzinski is on that team or something. I mean, it's a 7th rounder from last year. I know I'm really stretching it, but
I don't necessarily know if that's.
No, I mean, Cam York's the headliner here because Cam York is a 1st-round flyer pick who is going to be playing a game next weekend, and who's also talked about trying to be a better college player. He's not really focused on the NHL right now. He's focused on his college game. So I'm certainly
he looks like a candidate who might do 3 or 4 years. He's not one of these guys just getting a year or two and popping out more than likely.
Well, last year was his freshman year.
Right.
And I think that you're looking at, he's going to play this year and you might get next year. I don't think he's going to go 4.
You don't think he goes 4? You think he goes like 3?
Because I think he's going to know by that point that there's not much more he can do and there might be a place for him. Like, I think
he might be a guy. And obviously, it would require a little development. He's a guy. I forget. Is Hobey Baker just an MVP type award, or is it a forward specific award?
No, the Hobey Baker is for the best college player.
Okay.
So I wonder hockey's version of the Heisman.
I wonder if he challenges for something like that, and maybe not winning that his junior year could motivate him to go 4.
If he's nominated, sure. If he's not, then I don't think so. Like I agree. It's gonna be really tough to say. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of players, and they do tend. I will say this: it probably does tend to lean forward.
I'm sure it
doesn't mean that
When's the last time a defenseman won the Heisman? Is it still Charles Woodley in '97? Because I think it might be.
Well, you know what? Let me actually look up the Hobey Baker specifically because that's kind of an interesting one. I mean. By the way, I don't know how many people listening know this, but obviously we do this from a flyer standpoint.
Right.
Princeton University's arena is named Hobey Baker Arena.
Okay.
And they actually house the trophy there, I believe.
Or I knew that
because I went to one game there at one point in time, and I actually went to go find it because I'm like, I know that this is Hobey Baker Arena. I'm sure the Hobey Baker Award is somewhere here. Let's see.
I imagine most of these winners recently are forwards.
You would be wrong.
Really?
3 of the last 4 are defensemen.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Now, I don't know who some of these guys are, so I'm not going to try to say a bunch of names, but like a couple that recently have won it. So there was a run on forwards. Don't get me wrong. Okay, actually, wait until you hear one of the names that won the Hobie Baker Award, because I don't know if you're going to believe it.
Okay.
Because there's a connection here. In 2011, a left winger playing for Miami, I assume that's Miami, Ohio, by the way, because that's usually one of the, yes, it is, won the Hobie Baker Award. And years later would be in the Flyers organization.
Okay.
Any ideas?
This is a forward.
It's a forward, but it's way out there.
Forward in 20. Is it Tyler Pitlick?
No, it is not.
Oh, okay.
How about Andy Mealy?
Oh God.
No, but I'm trying to tell you, that's a Hobie Baker Award winner.
Okay, then.
Right. Now, obviously, there's a run on forwards here, and I go through. Johnny Gaudreau won it in 14. Jack Eichel won it in 15.
Okay.
Jimmy Vesey won it in 16. And then you start to get this little run on defensemen. Will Butcher won it in 2017. Then back to forward. Adam Gaudette won it in 18. Cale Makar won it in 19.
Remember when Will Butcher was a big prospect?
Will Butcher that year went up against I have to double check it because I believe he went up against it might have been Vecchione.
Oh yeah, remember Flyers legend Mike Vecchione?
Yeah, I know, right?
Mike will burn a year of your contract so you sign with us.
Oh, here, hold on. I got the rest of the award finalists here because this could help too. Because if you look at finalists, it tells you who's up for the running.
Yeah.
So like if I look, so the year that because Cale Makar won it in 2019, which probably should shock no one, right?
No, certainly not. No.
Okay, one of the finalists that year was Adam Fox.
It's pretty good. Also a Calder finalist. Imagine losing to Cale Makar twice.
Right. Okay, so here you go. So the year that what year did I say that was? Okay, so Will Butcher won it in 2017. The other two finalists were Mike Vecchione.
Okay.
And Zach Aston Reese.
Okay. There you go.
2016 is probably going to make you laugh because Jimmy Vesey kind of has bounced around, right?
Yeah.
He won the award. The other two finalists were Kyle Connor and Thatcher Demko.
Wow.
Now in fairness, VC was a finalist the year before and lost.
Right.
Which was whose year did I say that was? That wasn't Gaudreau's year. It was Eichel's year. So,
sure, but whose NHL career would you rather have, Jimmy Vesey's or Kyle Connor's?
True.
Right. And I'm not even talking about Thatcher Demko because his career is kind of just getting going.
Well, so the same thing happened in 13, by the way. Gaudreau was a finalist in 13 and then won in 14.
I think I knew that. I think I knew he lost his first year and he came back and won it.
Now I got to go check something really quick because I don't know. When was the last time? Okay, so the last time a goalie won the Hobie Baker Award was 2001.
Okay.
I'll try to give you a hint to see if you want to guess it.
Nope.
Okay, he went to Michigan State.
No, just hit me with it.
Ryan Miller.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get there.
No, but it was a guy who everybody should know, correct?
Yeah, for sure. That's a name.
Okay, I'm just saying it's a guy everybody should know.
That's a name. Yeah.
One of the last goalies to be nominated, though, and it's only happened like a couple times. In 2006, Brian Elliott was a finalist.
Brian Elliott
playing for Wisconsin. Playing for Wisconsin. I mean, there's a couple Flyer connections in here, by the way. Because apparently one year, Greg Carey was a finalist.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly enough, and then there's to actually pinpoint names that we know, regularly. Cam Atkinson was a finalist one year. Trying to see if there's any other good ones. I don't consider him a superstar, but Nathan Gerbe was a finalist one year playing for Boston College. We know his name,
right?
We can say that much. Zach Parise was a final.
I can't tell you if Nathan Gerbe's still in the league, but.
No, Zach Parise didn't win it. Okay, I was a little surprised because Parise was a finalist one year. Chris Kunitz was a finalist, guys like that, and then winners obviously believe it or not, in 2006 Matt Carl won it.
Flyers legend. Flyers legend.
Yeah, that was the one I was looking for. I knew there was another one somewhere in there.
Right.
That was the one I was looking for. But yes, you get the point.
Well, listen, one more thing before we do get out of here because we've kind of gone off the deep end here a little bit. I did want to touch a little bit on players who are currently still free agents.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Do you think there's any possibility that the Flyers sign a guy like Mike Hoffman or even a guy like Sami Vatanen on a 1-year deal just so that guy kind of gets a team?
Probably not.
Okay. I've heard a little
I
bit of
understand why we're
speculation on
talking.
that.
I understand why we're talking about it, and I understand especially if you get a guy who just needs see, it's really hard for me to call it this because Hoffman doesn't need a 1 year prove it deal
But he
to an
might
extent.
if nobody else has the money to sign
Well, no,
him.
I don't like I don't like calling it that. Like he may need a 1 year stopgap.
Right, you don't have to call it a prove it, but it's a chance to come to a team that was playing top 5 hockey, come in, try to maybe win a playoff series or two,
right?
Get your value up nice and high to hit the market again next year when everyone knows what's coming and maybe has a little bit more money to play with.
Right. I mean, if you're asking me to go out there and look at names on the list and like Hoffman, to me, I know Hoffman's the most intriguing name that's left among free agents, right? Like among all free agents. Right. To me, because I still think he's going to, even if it's a 1 year deal, I think he's going to net too much money.
I understand. He's the most desirable name. He's the guy that I would love to sign if you could possibly afford him, but I don't imagine he settles for anything the Flyers could.
But I will tell you right now, I would be really curious to see what Mikael Granlund gets. Or if the price tag comes down enough, like that would be one I would shoot for. If the price isn't too high, I wouldn't hesitate. To be quite honest, another guy who I think we've talked about before, who still is unsigned, by the way, and who I think but may not get a lot of money because he didn't make a lot previously. Anthony Duclair could be a really interesting name.
I would
the
love
longer it goes.
Duclair.
You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Yep. The longer it goes, I would look into that potentially.
I would want Anthony Duclair as like a member of this team going forward. Like I like Mike Hoffman as a 1 year, hey, come, almost like a trade, like a rental type of guy. Same with, a guy like Vatanen, who I mentioned, just as kind of an upgrade over Braun. But a guy like Duclair, I don't necessarily want to sign him for 1 year, $2.5 million. All right, cool. Test the market next year. Like, I would sign Anthony Duclair. Ooh, sorry about that. It's again, these summer shows go crazy.
Yeah, it's summer in November.
Summer. I would be interested potentially if things worked out in Anthony Duclair being a Flyer longer term.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, well, because the reason we said this because we know he can score, right. To an extent. I mean, we know he's got that in him in some way. It's just, I
think he would slot in with this group really, really nicely and serve a role that this group doesn't really have, kind of that tweener role between the young kids and kind of the, the established vets. He would kind of be in that Sean Couturier.
Yeah. Range. I mean, the key here is that before, and I'm going to, interestingly enough, I should mention, we did the last show and I probably have disappeared for 2 weeks. I don't think I've written anything in 2 weeks, to be honest. Like I've been really just
it's off.
August. Well, but it's like August, it's August. It's just, there's nothing going on, there's not really much to say or do, or you're waiting for it or whatever. They have to, they still have to sign Phil Myers, and we know this. But I'm probably prepared to tell a lot of people that just don't be, look, they could surprise all of us and go and sign one of these guys.
Trade for Patrick Laine.
Or do something crazy like that potentially. Yes.
It's still on the table.
But don't be surprised if this is it. That we're just sitting back and waiting, and that's it, The
Flyers are done. And like
more than likely. I'm not saying that,
Right.
Well, and you know what?
That's not a bad thing.
I need to see the contract for Phil Myers. Like once I know what Phil Myers is making and how they decide to ensure that they have some form of control for the next year and a half, 2 years, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Or year and a half, 2 years, 2 to 3 years, whatever it is.
I'd love to see Phil Myers sign a 2 or 3 year deal, kind of like Oscar.
Well, I mean, Mackenzie Weegar just signed a deal with Florida that was 3 years at $3.5 million or something like that, or something in that range. And a lot of people are saying wonder if that's the comp,
It might be.
I still think $3.5 million is too rich for him at this stage of his career because he's only played in 71 games.
If Phil Myers will give me 4 years at 3.5, I think I might do it.
I don't know that you're signing anybody to 4 years right now, though. That's the problem. Like we've watched, there's a reason. I mean, there's a reason why the Flyers did every move this offseason and nothing was long term.
Everything was short term, and I think that was on purpose.
I mean, there's a reason that the only outsider that's come in is Eric Gustafsson, and it's a 1 year, $3 million deal that's easy to work with. Justin Braun got 2, but it was a manageable 2. Brian Elliott got 1 more year. You kind of see how that balance works. And they didn't sign any of these other guys to a short-term deal just to bring him back and try to run it back completely. They were like, we got other guys that we can bring in through the system.
Right. You chose not to re-sign Tyler Pitlick.
Right. And the thing is that, the thing about not re-signing Tyler Pitlick, and this is kind of tying it back into the beginning, was Tanner Lashinsky could turn out to be a player that's like Tyler Pitlick,
and just
Wade Allison could be like that, and maybe they have more scoring touch.
Right. And they're making, $750K or whatever their ELC says. And Tyler Pitlick signed for what, $1.5 million, $2 million, something like that. Tyler Pitlick got a decent little bit of money, and these guys are all still making the minimum. And in a world where the cap's going to stay flat for the next couple of years, those little edges add up.
But, exactly. I mean, that's where it is. I mean, there's a lot of names out there that people are waiting for to see this, you know what I mean? Like Sam to see Moran, where these guys go. Well, no, to see where some of these guys go. We're waiting for Mike Hoffman to sign. We're waiting for Granlund to sign. I mean, let's go this way. Technically, you could even go down the list and go, we're waiting for Zdeno Chara to choose whether he's going to sign again with Boston, or maybe would he play another year somewhere else, or would he just retire?
There is no, I will eat this pop screen if Zdeno Chara plays a game in any other uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy it either. I don't think he'll play anywhere else.
Let me put a little caveat on that. Any other uniform in North America, I could see him going back to Slovakia and playing a year.
Well, yeah, sure. I could see him playing in another.
So country. I'm not eating the mic stand for that, but I'm saying for another NHL team, right? I don't think Zdeno Chara plays another game in the NHL unless he's playing for the Spoked Bee.
And I think that's totally fair.
Absolutely.
Like I wouldn't expect it to be any other way either. I mean, there's other names down. I mean, you go down the list. Like I think there's a list of like 17 that Sportsnet put out today or something like that. There's nothing that's terribly exciting on that list. Hoffman's probably the guy. I mean, like they rank Ilya Kovalchuk 4th on the list. I don't even know if I get excited about Kovalchuk.
No,
not for. I'm not talking. Just to clarify, by the way, I'm not talking about that from like I'm looking at it from a Flyer standpoint. I just don't know if I'm sitting there. I'm saying I'm not sitting there glued to.
I don't know if anybody's excited about Ilya Kovalchuk in 2020, and if they were, I think he'd be signed somewhere.
Right. Like it's just like I would fully expect Kovalchuk to go play in Russia again, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these other guys that like are actually on this list in the top 15, Matt Martin, Connor Sherry, like these are guys who are probably going to sign low-term, low-cost deals because people that's the reason they're not signed yet.
Right. Yep. And in a lot of ways, we're kind of in a holding pattern here, right? We got a lot of free agents that are unsigned. We're still sitting and waiting for Phil Myers, but we expect that to get done. I don't really think it's going to be a huge issue. Other than that, we really don't have a ton going on. I'm definitely glad we made the decision to go to every other week. I don't know about you.
We're trying
to
our
fill
best
a show.
Trying to
fill a show every week at this point might be a little painful.
Still think we got over an hour today, though. So somehow or other, we're pulling this off one way or another. We're pulling it off.
I think we still did too. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we get out of here?
Not really. I mean, if we're back in 2 weeks, then I hope that by this point first of all, I hope in 2 weeks we maybe have some, the report that we had seen. Well, right. The report we saw was that there, it could take 7 to 10 days as they try to go through with some stuff. I hope that next week.
That lined us up that hopefully by our next show, we have not only the plan. Not only do we have the initial statement, but we also have the clarification that comes 2 days later, because we all know there's always clarification 2 days later. So hopefully we have a little bit of a game plan for what the season's going to look like.
Right. And that's the first part. Hopefully we have a plan. I mean, let's just say I would love for the Monday news drop that normally happens when we record a new show to be that they are talking. Right. I mean, that's not something that I feel like we need to talk about. We've talked about what they should talk about, but hopefully that they are talking is the news drop.
Right.
Like let's see something like that. I mean, sure, I'd also love to tell you that, in 2 weeks' time, maybe we'll have some news on Phil Myers, because I kind of thought that one would have been cleaned up a month ago.
We also said that 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago. And, that's something that, again, it'll get resolved.
I thought he would have had a contract before Nolan Patrick did.
I agree.
That was the thing. And I know Nolan Patrick was qualifying offer. It's easy to work with that. I mean, that's probably about as easy as it comes. You make an offer because you have to.
Hey, here's what we are
if you want to keep his rights,
to give you. Okay, right, I will accept that.
Right. I think it was nice because it worked out in like the right way. It was, here's an offer. we know, like, we hope that it's better. Like, we hope you're better. We
Everybody
hope you
knows
get
what the
back.
situation is, right?
Right.
This
Everybody
isn't a
knows the situation.
slight.
The Flyers did what they had to do, and Nolan Patrick kind of sat there going, "Yeah, I got really no way to."
He knows it's
get
not a
more.
slight. He knows the organization isn't trying to rob him. He knows that this is kind of what he deserves at this point. This 1 year, like I said, it's kind of an ELC extension.
Right. And hopefully that's where it goes. You know what I mean? Like,
but either way, if you want to give us some ideas to talk about on the show 2 weeks from now, you can do so on Twitter. We are at YWT Podcast. You can also tweet Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Yeah, he's also at Flyerdelphia, at Sports Talk PHL. You can find the show everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, pretty much everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yep. You can also find the show on sportstalkphilly.com. We appreciate them hosting us over there on the site when they do. And other than that, I think that'll just about do it. Like I said, toss us some ideas for things to talk about next time. And until then, we'll see you later.